Spin Ventures here, and we are at Paynes Creek Historic State Park here in Bowling Green, Florida. Not Bowling Green, Kentucky. Bowling Green, Florida. And today I decided to come out and do a historical tour between the Seminole Wars, the Second Seminole War and the Third Seminole War, which took place in the historical events took place right here at Paynes Creek. And so we're going to go through the visitor center, that's where we're at now, and talk about what happened previously and during the Seminole Wars. So, follow me. Alright, so we'll start out. Of course, we have the First Seminole War. There were 3 of them in Florida. 3 wars waged against the Seminoles. The First Seminole War was in 1816 to 1818. That's the earliest when it first started. Then the second one was 1835 to 1842, and the third one was 1855 to 1858. And the Second Seminole War and the Third Seminole War, both of these wars were part of the Paynes here at Paynes Creek at this site, and it occurred, like I said, in 1849 to 1850 between the Second and Third Seminole Wars. So let's go ahead and back it up into the log cabin. Now we're in the log cabin here, kind of what the settlers were to have as homes during the Second and Third Seminole Wars as they took place. And here's some of the kind of the not appliances, but goods, food goods, and home goods were stored in the homes during the wars, as well as some of the tools that were used down here. These are some of the tools down here, like axes. They were hatchets and axes, plus some bullets, and also got some iron here used there. The barrels, of course, you got bags of salt and gunpowder as well. Salt and gunpowder. And of course, clothes, textiles with clothes and sheets and blankets, as well as candles. Up here, sorry, the light is in there. There we go. You can see one candle here. And tea kettle. Pots and pans and kitchen appliances. Going on into the one, oh yes, I do remember. Now I'm starting to get flashbacks. I was here a couple years ago, but I couldn't remember if I was actually here or not. But yes, I have been here before. This was the evening of July 17th of 1849 as the Seminole Indians attacked a home and 3 store clerks and opened fire as they sat down to supper. George Payne, who was, they named the historical state park after, Paynes Creek, named after. The Seminoles opened fire and while they were eating supper, and George Payne and Dempsey Withen were killed instantly. William McCollin was wounded in the left shoulder and quickly ran into the woods with the wife and child. So George Payne, who was this man right here. This is George Payne. He was killed and face planted into his hot bowl of soup. And also there's the Seminole Indians that are opening fire. Now, we're going to go ahead and make our way through, as you can see, the blueprint for victory. After the murders and the news spread, federal troops were rushed to Florida, and they had the Indian Territory here. They were rushed to Florida. The U.S. force of 1,400 men outnumbered the known Seminole warriors 5-1. The strategy with General Twiggs to defeat the Indians consists of building a chain of frontier forts across Florida. The forts would confine the Indians and harass them until they surrendered. Twiggs told his superiors a total of 4,150 men be needed to plan his work. So they set out all these forts across the east coast and up into the panhandle of the state right here. They up across what would be probably near Gainesville. This would be up in Gainesville and Jacksonville, because Fort Clinch is in Jacksonville. And then you would have, of course, the East Coast here, Fort Pierce and Fort Jupiter, Fort Lauderdale, which is the town known as Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and Fort Dallas, down close to Miami. That's where they had all the forts surrounding the area, so the Indians they attack. Like here, right now we'd actually be in Indian territory, as well as setting up with forts. And then you got over here near Tampa. Now here, cannon fire. Now this one is more or less of this was a military cannon, and it was used by the settlers to set up the forts during the home life. So, more on that here in a moment. So the chief of the Seminoles was known as Billy Bowlegs, and he wanted peace. He knew the Indians could not win this war, and the chief met with General Twiggs, commander of the federal troops, and explained the trouble had been caused by renegade Indians. He turned 3 of the warriors over to the general, presented him with the hand of a 4th who had been killed trying to escape. So, Chief Billy Bowlegs did not want a war to start. He basically wanted a peace treaty, wanted to sign for peace between the settlers and the Seminole Indians in order to regain the land back and give back. The Seminoles wanted to give back the land to the settlers of the state, but because of the rampage renegade Indians, they started a Second Seminole War. And it was during the Second Seminole War that in 1849, as the Seminoles, some 3,000 Indians were removed from Florida, various means. When hostilities were declared to be at an end in 1842, remaining Seminoles were granted use of a 2.5 million acre. Hunting and planting was reserved for the Indians in southern Florida. And then back in scattered villages from Lake Kissimmee to the Big Cypress Swamp. They lived by hunting and farming and owned contact with whites to trade, which would be the settlers. Now moving on to the other half of the Seminole, this is actually the signage of the peace treaty and peace talks as it was routine between General Twiggs, commander of the federal forces in Florida. They traveled to Fort Choconicla to meet the chief of the Seminoles, Billy Bowlegs, in January of 1850. This was although some Indians voluntarily left the state, a number retreated into the wilderness, and migrate was best expressed by Oshawa, a trusted counselor of Billy Bowlegs. So this is them signing the peace treaty and coming to an agreement of settlers. And then this was the soldier's life during the military campaign against the Seminoles. The soldier's worst enemy was not the Indians, but boredom and illness. That's the worst thing that could happen, because you have between the ones that are fighting the war, which are the Seminole Indians, and the settlers, men, and it was very, very treacherous and hardship of the settlers trying to build these forts and survive. Life in the fort was monotonous routine of drills, meals, and housekeeping chores. It consumed part of the day, leaving men idle for long periods of time, boredom, spending free moments drinking or gambling, which often resulted in mischief. A poor diet, inadequate facilities, and German-infested drinking water resulted in rate of illness reached 70%. And the post sergeant struggled with the problem as best he could, using the primitive methods of his day. And so, like I said, very hard times in these for the settlers back when building the forts of the Second and Third Seminole Wars. Alright, so we're back over here with the Seminoles who stayed in Florida. And even though Billy Bowlegs and the majority of people left for the West, some of them, like Chief Apika, Sam Jones, a stubborn foe of the whites, he stayed in Florida and stayed on the land. And explained he was too old to make the journey, stay in Florida, basically to die. And so the Seminoles who remained avoided contact with the whites except to trade for staple items, like these canoes. This is them building a canoe, and with one of the Seminoles here rowing the canoe down the river. And as you can see, it's been a very sad expression on his face right here. He's very bored and lonely. Not only that, but also some of them are starving to death because of the lack of food and provision that they have and the supplies they have. It's very little. Not long after the Second Seminole War ended, it was only a few years later that the Third Seminole War had begun. With that, that bad feeling started out between the Indians and the whites, and that was a conflict on December 20th of 1855 was when it started. A military patrol exploring the Big Cypress Swamps was attacked by 30 Indians led by Billy Bowlegs, and then that's what started the Third Seminole War and deserted village 2 days before. Bowlegs was angered to discover that the soldiers had destroyed his banana plants and carried away several bunches of bananas. So basically the Third Seminole War had started between some crazy person and mischievous person burnt out and destroyed their banana trees, their banana plants, and took a bunch of bananas. Okay. Moving on through the years, the Third Seminole War only lasted for 3 years. And then on foot, horseback, by boat, dugout canoe, Seminoles were relentlessly pursued into the deepest mangrove and cypress swamps. Most of them, 38 warriors, 85 women and children surrendered, agreed to leave Florida in May of 1858. Military commander in Florida declared the war is over. Yeah, I wasn't actually planning on coming out today because of my dad's health and his just being so weak and can't hardly walk. He has to use a walker to get around the house and to go to the bathroom, go get something to eat or drink out of the kitchen. I really was not planning on, like I said, coming out, doing any more spin ventures for a while, but after talking with my dad, Thursday night, and because he was asking me what I was doing this weekend, and I said I wasn't planning on doing anything because you're sick. You can't move. And I was planning on staying around the area just in case, something were to happen, and I could get there in a matter of minutes, either at the house or God only knows not, hopefully, prayerfully not happen, is at the hospital. And so I wanted to stay around here for a little, at least for a couple weeks until they're going to Ohio in a couple weeks. And I'm thinking to myself, how I would cancel those flight tickets. But they're going, and so, but I'm staying here, I'm staying in Florida because I can't afford it. or make a new car payment. But anyway, so that's why I was staying here and doing small stuff around here, or if anything. But now, alright, moving on. We're at the fort site. So now, as you can look behind me, this is the fort site right here. It was, until it was burnt down, because Fort Choconicla was the vast number of temporary log forts built on the American frontier during the Indian Wars. The spot was chosen because it was the highest ground in the vicinity and close to a water supply. So, right here, you see, right now there's nothing. Now, probably never again will they build a replica. I thought they would have a replica fort, but they don't. And so, this is it right here. This is where the fort was back in the Second and Third Seminole War. And they used the log houses, logs to build the fort, and because it was on higher ground for one, and it was close to a water supply, and two, and also right next to it was the blockhouse. This was the blockhouse, a part of the most frontier forts, and an overhanging upper story gun ports in the floor on the second level. And now in the second level it would have been up about right here, and they had little doors cut out around as prevent an enemy from rushing in the building and sheltering against the walls. So anyone rushing in, mostly a Seminole, a Native American, rushing in, they can gun them down immediately. And we have arrived finally at the Suspension Bridge. Bridge looks like the Golden Gate Bridge in California and San Francisco. We're gonna walk across this bridge. And like I said, I'm out of breath. I got my water in the car, or in my bag. And I'll find somewhere to stop and rest to cross over. Because I literally walked in a giant circle for feels like an hour. But there it is. That's the water. Paynes Creek. I'd love to go stand in that water right now, cool down. There it is. That side too. Now I'll cross this bridge. Through the backwoods. Through the backwoods of Florida. There's somebody over there. I heard a voice over behind me. Yeah. But yeah, there we go. Got the bridge. Oh, they're ahead of me. But make our way through here. The bridge. Alright, and we have made it. This is the memorial of the Captain George S. Payne, aged 32 years old when he was killed by the party of Seminole Indians. He was a native Cornwall commander, also of David Whiddon, killed by a party of Seminole Indians on the evening of the 17th day of July of 1849. How are the mighty fallen? That's where he lays right here, actually. I think it's just a memorial. It's not an actual gravestone, but I kind of think of it as a gravestone, considering that the state park here in Florida, it's named after him, Paynes Creek Historical Park. And so, but yeah, this is his memorial stone here at the in the woods on the historic trail in the back, in the very back of the trail, one of the trails anyway. So there it is. Now Captain George S. Payne, 32 years old when he was shot and killed by Seminole Indians.